Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tina Pierce-Fragoso, and I'm Associate Director of Admissions and part of the Equity and Access team. I'm also a proud citizen of the Nanaco-Lenape Tribal Nation, and I want to welcome you to Quaker Conversations, Cultural Resource Centers. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that Penn and Philadelphia occupy the traditional homelands of the Lenape. Penn acknowledges and expresses gratitude to the Indigenous people past and present for the opportunity to live and learn in Lenapehoking, or land of the Lenape. And I'm very excited to be part of this panel. We are so fortunate to have 6 distinct cultural resource centers to not only enrich the Penn experience for our students, but for the entire community. And I also want to acknowledge the generations of students, faculty, and staff that work to create these spaces, the home away from home for so many. And today we're going to hear from 6 representatives from our cultural resource centers. I'll ask a few introductory questions and leave a few minutes at the end for some open Q&A. So you can feel free to place your questions in the Q&A box. So I'm going to start off by asking each panelist to introduce themselves, name, affiliation to Penn, if they've been a Penn student, to really describe their cultural resource center, to highlight some programs, how do students get involved, and the big question today is how are you virtually engaging with the students, the new and returning students? And so we'll get started by introducing Bryan from McCoo.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bryan Peterson. I'm the director of McCoo. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a Penn alum from engineering, class of '93, and I also have a couple of degrees from Penn's Graduate School of Education. McCoo is Penn's Black Cultural Center. We're located in the Arch Building in the middle of campus, but now we're located everywhere via this virtual world we're living in. And I think for us, you know, the pivot in some ways has been, it's been a little complicated because what I really find most endearing about McCoo and our partner spaces in the Arch is just being in the middle of campus and being a stop-off point for students in between classes or grabbing lunch or meeting with friends, or maybe, you know, in the early evening, waiting for a student group activity, being a space, and then also having the Arch building to host a bunch of activities. So now in this virtual environment, we've done a lot of outreach with our alums to kind of bring them back in to do peer mentoring and give talks. And we've also leaned heavily on our upperclassmen to really welcome our first year students in a really robust way, because one of my chief concerns, and I have home court advantage here, being that my daughter is also in Penn's class of 2024. So I get to see firsthand what it's like for you know, students on the other side of Zoom calls, being that she's making her Zoom calls to campus from our household, and just knowing that there's a lot of disconnect, right? So what we've been trying to do is not overwhelm people with more Zoom calls, but to be really strategic about when and where we do them, but just making sure to really have that personal connection and trying to replicate McCoo as much as possible. It is a challenge, but I think, again, there are some trade-offs, you know, being on this call now and being able to speak to, you know, 565, 66, it keeps going up and down, of you all, you know, on this beautiful Wednesday afternoon, I think is one of the things that, you know, for us, it's easier to organize doing this now and bringing all of you together. So that's one way, you know, that we're trying to connect with our students as well. So happy to answer more questions as we go, but glad to be here with you all today.
Oh, I unmute myself. Thank you. Thank you, Bryan. Now I'd like to introduce Corelli from La Casa Latina.
Hi, everyone. It is so great to welcome you to Penn. My name is Lisarraga. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the interim director of La Casa Latina. I am also a proud Penn alum. I did my undergrad at Penn studying political science, graduated in 2013, and I just completed my master's from the School of Education in Education, Culture, and Society. We are also neighbors of McCoo in the Arch Building and of Patch, located right in the heart of campus. And as Bryan was saying, this transition into a virtual setting has some of its challenges. As you can see in the picture, our centers are really known for having that living room family feel. So much of what we have been doing in our programming is recreating that in virtual spaces. So on Fridays, we've been having what we call Cafecito con la Casa, where you and everyone in your family is welcome to come and join us and connect with one another and just chat. So many of our students have, we've gotten to know their pets. We've gotten to know some alums and their children this way. So it has been really beautiful to see people still wanting that connection and wanting to have that sense of community, even from a distance. Even though we are in a virtual setting, we are very much in the middle of celebrating our 35th annual Latinx Heritage Month celebration. So we have been doing our virtual open house. We have also launched our 4th year of the Familias Mentorship Program, where we match incoming students with an upper class student, a graduate student, and an alum. And especially in this moment, it has been really helpful for students that may not have set foot on campus to have this built-in mini community, to have people that are thoroughly invested in their well-being. So we're really taking our cues from students, when they let us know, like, this time works best for Zoom meetings, or we want to do more games, or we want to have a discussion around this. Which is something that we do even when we're not in a virtual setting. At La Casa Latina, we know that your Latinx identity definitely intersects with other important parts of your identity. So we really want you to be able to bring your full self, whether it's over Zoom or whether it is hopefully very soon in our Salita space. But we're very excited to welcome you to Penn, and I look forward to meeting many of you hopefully in the near future.
Thank you, Karoli. Now I'd like to introduce you to Kia from the Greenfield Intercultural Center.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kia. I am the Associate Director of the Greenfield Intercultural Center, and I am also a Penn alumna from the Graduate School of Education in the Intercultural Communication Program. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and yeah, it's interesting to now be in this virtual space. I just started my position right as the pandemic hit, and so in a lot of ways, I've been meeting all of the students and all of my coworkers virtually, and that has been a good challenge, I think, in terms of just really thinking about doing this type of work and in interacting with students. So the Greenfield Intercultural Center is a space where, students, just like all of my colleagues in the other cultural resource centers, we're here to support students. We're here a space where students can come as they are and offer a lot of resources for particularly FIGLI students, first-gen low income, and for the natives at Penn students. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to ask me.
Thank you, Kia. Next, we're going to go to Malik from the LGBT Center.
Thank you, Tina. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Malik Muhammad. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I serve as the Associate Director of the Penn LGBT Center. I've been at Penn for just over 2 years, just started my 3rd academic year. It's been a nice, amazing journey so far, being in the Penn family, and I'm excited to maybe welcome some of you into our Penn family. So a little bit about the center. We are somewhat of a central hub on campus for all things LGBTQ+, right? We serve faculty, staff, students, both undergraduate and graduate and professional students, as well as alumni, as well as a little bit of the local Philadelphia area. And we do this through our 3 pillars of advocacy, education, and support. So much of that has had to shift a bit in terms of our virtual spaces here, but we are really trying our best to still provide that sense of community, that sense of belonging, right? We know that during this time of quarantine, especially folks within the LGBTQ+ community, there is this extreme sense of isolation, right? There's a chance that you may be going back into spaces that are not the most welcoming and inclusive. So we are constantly trying to maintain spaces. So we have like our weekly kikis that we do every week for all of our students. We have Thank Grad, it's Friday for our graduate students. And even for our faculty and staff, we've been hosting sessions for folks to just come together. In addition, we have rebranded our work study students a little bit. So we have just about 10 work study students that primarily were working in the space. And now that we're not in the space, they have heavily been supporting us in our programmatic efforts. So we're doing a bit more around masculinity work. We're collaborating with a bunch of different spaces. We're doing some more purposeful intersectional work, right? Really making sure that we are doing our best to, one, reach our community, but two, recognize and understand that LGBTQ plus folks are across all of campus, in every department, in every school, right? So we try our best to dip our hands into various different spaces, collaborating with lots of different offices. We work heavily with CAPS, all of our sibling culture resource centers, again, continuously providing opportunities for our community to connect, but then also for our overarching campus community to learn, right? I mentioned that education pillar. We are always trying to make sure that our spaces have at least a foundational knowledge of what it means to be a member of the LGBTQ plus community and how you can support folks that identify that way. Again, including that intersectional piece and knowing that multiple pieces of our identity are going to play a role in how we engage in this world. So that's a little bit about us. Again, we are constantly just putting programming out there that is bringing our folks together. But as Bryan said, we're doing our best not to inundate too much, right? We know that folks are zoomed out. You know, there's just a lot happening right now. So we're even creating spaces where you can just come and not really do much, right? Just come and hang out and relax. So we're a space that allows you to be authentically you, no matter what. For always and forever, you belong. Thank you.
Thank you, Malik. Before I move on, you mentioned CAPS, and I wondered if for just a moment you could briefly explain what CAPS is. We're known for all these, these shorter versions. I forget what it's called right now, but would you?
Yes, of course. So CAPS, I'm so sorry, our acronyms. There's so many acronyms here at Penn. CAPS is our counseling and psychological services. So at the University of Pennsylvania, we have a dedicated number of staff that support our campus's mental health, right? So it's a space that even virtually we can still connect to, still get engaged with. And again, our CAPS are amazing partners to us as cultural resource centers, providing us opportunities to send referrals as needed, to put programming together that is specific to some of our communities. And they've always been amazing partners and can truly, truly help push us forward in terms of our mental health and overall holistic well-being.
Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. And now I'd like to introduce you to Peter from the Pan Asian American Community House, also known as PACH.
Thanks, Tina, and thank you for also expressing your Indigenous affiliation as well. And I also want to recognize that UPenn or Penn is on Lenape land, and we need to also recognize that, constantly and in our daily lives. My name is Peter Van Do, or Peter Van Do in Vietnamese, as I identify as Vietnamese American. I use he, him pronouns, and I serve as the director for the Pan Asian American Community House, also known as Patch at UPenn or Patch at Penn. And we are the Asian and Asian American Resource Center on campus. I also act as a lecturer for the Asian American Studies program and a pre-major advisor for the College of Arts and Sciences. Overall, founded in 2000, Patch was established due to the activism of our undergraduate students, our graduate and professional students, as well as our alumni, faculty and staff, and local community partners. And so I can say this, with great pride that we're officially turning 20 this year. I believe Baku is also turning 20 this year as well. And although that we can't be in person, including with our alumni and all the folks that have helped establish our center, we're happy that everybody's staying safe. Patch is also located in the Arch Building, as Corelli and Bryan have mentioned. We're near the Locust Walk and also near the Love Statue. And we sit right next to Maku, the Black Cultural Resource Center, as well as La Casa de Latinx Cultural Resource Center. And we also work closely with all of our partners over here, such as the Greenfield Intercultural Center, GIC, the Penn Women's Center, the PWC, as well as the LGBT Center. though that, you know, we're not just brick and mortar, as everyone is probably going to get the impression of, like, it's really the people that, you know, support our space and, you know, connect with us. That's past, present, and also future, including all of you. And so what really makes the space is the people, and I have deep pride to being a part of this dynamic community. We serve as a welcoming space for undergraduate students as well as graduate and professional students. And we also celebrate South Asian, Southeast Asian, Pacific Islander, and East Asian American cultures. And we use the verb celebrate purposely because anyone can celebrate, whether you're Asian identified or you identify as non-Asian American. Everyone can celebrate. And then we also have been playing a word with communities, plural. We use the word communities to acknowledge that there's such diversity within the Asian and Asian American umbrella. And so, so we want to acknowledge all those you know, identities such as first-gen low income, women, LGBTQ+, international, religion, for example, Muslim, caste, mixed race, disability, as well as Pacific Islander, Southeast Asian, South Asian, and East Asian perspectives, for example. There are currently 2 full-time staff members within our space. Hitomi Yoshida and myself are here to really support everyone around community building, leadership, and personal development. And just think of us as institutionalized mentors and or, you know, folks that really have your back. And this is pretty much the spirit that we're here to do in support of all our undergraduate and graduate professional students. I would also say, please connect with us over social media. Our social media handle is patch@UPenn. That's for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And overall, we do similar, you know, programming as well as with the other cultural resource centers. And, but more specifically, what I can say is that in addition to our Heritage Week programming, our mentorship programming, as well as leadership programming, we also have spaces for our first-gen low-income students, our Asian American FEM identified folks. There's a group called the South Asian Women's Space, so on and so forth. So we're here to support you all, and thank you so much for creating this space, Tina, for us.
Thank you so much, Peter. Let's see. Oops. And next I want to introduce you to Sanjana from the Penn Women's Center.
Thanks so much, Tina. And hi, everyone. My name is Sanjana Bijlani. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the associate directors at the Women's Center. And if you're looking at the screen right now in like the bottom right corner, you'll also see my colleagues there. So we have Maria Acosta, who's our financial and admin coordinator. We have Elisa Foster, who's also an associate director. And our director is on the right there, Sharice Lott-Hammond. So I want to start by introducing you to the folks who make this space, the physical space, what it is when we are back on campus. I know that we're all going to be really excited to welcome you back. We're really lucky that the Women's Center on campus is currently co-located in the same building with the African American Resource Center. So together we've been able to really work collaboratively as confidential resources, but also just as a space for community gathering. Like all of my colleagues have shared, our work is really centered in trying to think of ways that we can continue to have conversations about gender equity, about social justice, about what it means for all of you who are listening in or watching to be able to experience personal and professional growth while you're here as part of the community. And even after you leave, our hope is that we get to stay connected and that the relationships that we're building are relationships that will see us through even moments like this where we're all trying to navigate what it means to be in this virtual moment. Ways that we've been trying to navigate it include trying to set up weekly check-in spaces. So you can always find us in one of our virtual community check-ins. So we have them 3 times a week if folks want to come through. We've also been starting to have spaces for our writers' room. So if folks are trying to create that environment that you'd find in the library of studying together or listening to music together and working on a paper that's coming up, we're trying to just think of ways to create experiences similar to what you might have been able to experience here on campus. And so I think in general, our hope is that you'll find your own way to get connected to the Women's Center, whether that's through one of our many student groups. I know that all of them have been able to transition to Zoom meetings, to having more active social media presences. I think all of them are just trying to, as everyone said, be as flexible as possible. We know that this is very, very new. And even for those who might have had some familiarity with being online, this is a real moment of learning together and trying to listen to each other to figure out what makes the most sense, to be adaptive as we can, just so that we're able to meet each other where we're at. And I really encourage you to feel free to reach out at any time if you have questions about other ways to feel connected. I think we also try our best to acknowledge that as much as we are so happy to work at a women's center, we always recognize that there's a lot of different ways to connect with your identity. And we try to welcome all of those identities and lived experiences into our space. We're here to grow with you as much as you are doing the growing. We're learning with you too. And I think we're all just really excited to welcome you. And I hope as you hear more in the next portion of the program, you'll be able to share more questions and we'll be able to hopefully give you a little bit of a picture of what things look like for us. But thank you all for being here in this moment too.
Thank you so much. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now. So it should be back to being able to see all of the different panelists here. I just want to say again, if you have questions for the panelists, looks like we're going to have some time for that. So please type those in the Q&A box. We do have some more questions that are coming up. I hope by now you can start to see some of the relationships that even exist between the cultural resource centers. We're all very excited to see each other. The relationships really help support the work that we're doing all across campus. And those relationships are so strong that even in this virtual world, we're finding new ways to engage with each other and even with you to give you a sense of the community. And I also want to just stress, while you're looking at schools, you certainly want to see academic fit. You want to know that this is a place where you can thrive academically, but to not forget that your identity, those things that you participate in outside the classroom, and some of these resource centers, you will be able to participate in academic spaces as well. But these are vital pieces to your whole college experience. And we can't predict which ways you will connect. And it would just really encourage you to be open-minded about really engaging in each of these spaces and knowing that this is an opportunity to really maybe learn something about yourself that you haven't experienced before. Perhaps it's a part of your identity that you know little about. You know, college could offer that space. And to just, I hope also that you can just feel the vibe of the community has a lot of love, and we share a lot of spaces together and excited to get together. And that's how a lot of those experiences exist. You'll find these resources in each other's spaces, supporting each other's events. And that's sort of really a strength of the Penn community. And so now I'm going to ask some individual questions. I'm going to start with Bryan. Now, each of the cultural centers could really answer any of these questions, but for the timepiece, so thinking about academic intersection with the cultural resource centers. So you might think that the CRCs are just that supporting extracurricular piece, but that's not true. In fact, Bryan teaches a couple courses in Africana Studies and other places. Bryan, can you tell us a little bit about what the coursework and academic partnerships look like and what's available through the centers and that type of resource?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I've been really lucky even prior to getting my doctorate. One of my mentors, Howard Stevenson, I was a graduate associate in Du Bois College House when Howard Stevenson was the faculty director there, and there was a competition across the college houses to develop a new seminar. So we put together a seminar proposal. We taught it that year. I was able to co-teach with Howard, and that was one of the reasons and really one of the motivations for me to go back and get my doctorate, because I enjoyed that experience so much. And then that supposed one-year seminar ended up becoming a seminar that we offered, I think, for 9 years after that. Again, right in the college house. So for us in the Arch building, I've taught some small seminars in the Arch. I teach a class on Penn's Black history. So really looking at different individuals who have come through Penn, either as faculty or as students, or Penn's relationship with West Philadelphia. I teach that with our chaplain, Chaz Howard. I also teach a course on financial literacy with a Penn alum who currently plays in the NFL, Brandon Copeland. So it's a really interesting trajectory. I think that's one of the beautiful things about Penn, is that when people have new ideas, you sort of figure out who the right people to talk to are, and you can get these things pushed forward. I've taught classes in the Graduate School of Education, where I'm an alum. And one of the things that I've been able to do through the courses that I've taught is really think about our scholars program called Paul Robeson and Anna Julia Cooper Scholars, and think about how do we integrate some of those seminar-like elements into helping those students who really, get connected to us because they're interested in social justice. We really see what we do with them week to week almost as following a syllabus. So again, I think there's a lot of different things that we do across the board in the different centers that really are infused by, a strong intensity around academic engagement, civic engagement, personal development. And for me, with my courses, it really is about relationship building. So on in a parallel, I take what I do at MACU and bring it to the classroom and really try to get to know my students. I'm fortunate to teach, in the most cases, small seminars, although my financial literacy class last year had 60 students, which was the largest class I ever taught. But because we had a number of TAs, we were still able to really get to know each student well. So again, I think, having the sensibility of the cultural center kind of inform my work in the classroom and be able to create new opportunities really is a great blend. And I'm really blessed to be able to do this work.
Thank you so much, Bryan. It's so exciting. That's one of the things I found really good about college, to be able to academically explore identity and things around identity and intersections. And so really nice to know that in each of the centers, there are actually coursework that is being taught by someone who's in the actual center or related to the center staff or activities. So thank you so much for sharing. Corelli, you're a recent alum, both with undergraduate and graduate programs, and as being a student and then being engaged as an alumni and now as a director. I wonder if you can speak a little bit about how your involvement in the CRCs as a student and as an alum and now as a professional really prepared you for what work you're doing now, and really thinking about the influence of the alumni engagement on the current students.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me as a student, one of my main experiences in the cultural resource centers was of having so much poured into me. A lot of mentorship support, a lot of leadership development, and I think most importantly, just a lot of love and confidence. I was a first-generation low-income student when I arrived to Penn, and I was also an undocumented student. So for me, a place like Penn at moments felt really large and overwhelming, and the cultural resource centers really gave me that sense of a home base. And while hanging out at La Casa Latina, at MACU, at GIC, the Penn Women's Center, it was not rare to have alumni pop in and just hug the directors. And it was like a homecoming every single time. People that were so loved, that would bring their children, that would bring their loved ones and be like, this is where I grew up, essentially. And so now when I have the opportunity of working as an associate director of La Casa Latina, I wanted to create more opportunities for our alumni to have that sense of connection, and for students in a very intentional way to have that sense of support and community from more alumni. In my experience as a student at Penn, I learned so many leadership skills and so many management skills that at the time I wouldn't have said like, oh, I'm learning how to problem solve. I'm learning how to develop and manage projects. I'm learning how to manage multiple deadlines. But all of our centers, including La Casa Latina, we support and advise dozens, if not hundreds of student groups. And most of these groups are completely led by our students, and many of these student groups have a lot of connections with alumni that come in. For example, I'm thinking of groups like Onda Latina, of Mecha, of La Vida magazine, groups that are in and of themselves these institutions that have been on campus for many, many years. So our alumni have created really strong relationships with our students in that capacity. And through La Casa Latina, as I mentioned earlier, we have the Familias Mentorship Program to really connect our students to alumni that have similar interests and passions to them, whether that be wanting to further explore your identity as an Afro-Latinx individual, wanting to explore your identity as a queer Latinx person, or if you're interested in going to med school or law school. We try to make these matches in a very intentional way to expose our students to more career and personal pathways. And I think what I have seen, especially in these last couple of months, that has been really heartwarming is how eager alumni are to connect to our students. It is, I think at least once a week, I get about 2 to 5 emails, depending on the week, of alumni being like, hey, I would love to connect with students. Hey, I have this job opportunity or this internship opportunity. Do you know of students that are interested? So I think that says so much about the communities that exist at Penn, that sense of connection that remains even after you graduate. And I think that's something really important for students to consider as they're applying to college. Like, what is, beyond a network, like, will I feel a sense of belonging, a sense of support? And I think that's something really, really important for students to keep in mind.
Thank you so much. What a comprehensive answer. And again, thinking about alumni engagement across the whole of the cultural resource centers, and thinking about this could be 20, 30 years down the road where these connections can still continue to make a tremendous impact in our lives. So thank you so much for sharing that. Kia, GIC is the home of the first generation low income program. I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit, what does it mean to be FIGLY, especially what does it mean to be FIGLY at Penn? What types of resources are available for students that identify? And then how do students actually access those resources?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So in general, first generation lower income, also known as FGLI, or known fondly as FIGLY, in terms of definitions, is defined as students who are the first in their families to go to college and or come from a lower income household. And so there's multiple definitions, and this is something a lot of students have asked us, is like, I don't know if I'm FIGLY. I don't know what that really means. And I think, SFS, Student Financial Services, they have a certain definition about what is considered FIGLY because based on income, and then admissions may have their own definition. But overall, with the GIC being home to the FIGLY program, we identify, FIGLY students as being the first in their family to attend college, being the first in their family to attend an Ivy League institution or a predominantly white institution, right? We have students who come to us and they're like, well, my mom got a community college degree, my dad got a BA, am I FIGLY? It depends. We let the students identify in terms of how they want to identify as first gen and lower income or not. But our resources are all here to support students. And so the FIGLY program was opened in 2016, housed under the GIC as part of the Division of Vice Provost for University Life. And really the FIGLY program is here to support students' academic, their personal, their social transition. And we facilitate this through community building and building a sense of belonging for students who may feel like they don't belong in a space like Penn. And, quite interestingly, our president of Penn, Amy Gutman, is a FIGLY student herself, and she's been a big supporter of the FIGLY student development. And so we have people all over campus to support students who identify as FIGLY. Penn First is the student organization that is registered to for students to be a part of. So if you're interested, actually tonight we have a FIGLY Fall Fair. So it's like a student fair, but it's all virtual, and it's happening tonight at 6:30. And I have the links for registration if you're interested in attending the FIGLY Fall Fair, where you will get to learn directly from the student leaders themselves. We have 9 FIGLY student organizations that support FIGLY student experiences. And so just to quickly name off the 9, if you're interested interested, there's the iFIGLY, which is for international first-gen low-income students who come to Penn. So they will be represented tonight. There's Penn First. I talked a little bit about that earlier. There's Collective Success at Penn, which is a network within Philadelphia to help FIGLY students come to or apply for colleges. There's also Questbridge Scholars. I don't know if any of the students here are, you know, a Questbridge student. There's 7-8, which is a first-gen low-income student group that's focused on Asian Pacific Islander identities. There's FIGLY DAB, which is first-gen low-income students who are a part of the Dean's advisory board to bring a lot of issues to the top level in terms of thinking about how can we be more inclusive and more thoughtful in programming for FIGLY students. There's Flight, FIGLY in Tech and Engineering. So if you're an engineering student and you're interested in learning more about that, those students will be there tonight at the FIGLY Fall Fair. There's Penn Common Sense to help students think about, you know, financial literacy, right? Because when you're the first in your family to go to college and you don't have a lot of financial literacy, there's a lot of different things that you don't know about. And so students have organized Penn Common Sense as a way to be more educated about financial literacy. And then last but not least, there's the FIGLY Q, which is the FIGLY Queer student group, and they will also be represented tonight. So feel free to join us tonight if you want to hear directly from the students in terms of how they are navigating Penn, what resources are on campus for them. So that information I can share.
Thank you so much. And I just want to stress the first-gen low income and even just how you identify in general, that's something that, you know, admissions and financially, that all is kind of very different than what you actually get to express in person. So we're not going to knock on your door to say, hey, come do this. We want you to be able to say, I need this, or I'm interested in this, or this is available and it really meets my needs. And so to really think about reaching out to these different types of resources when you find your college home. So thank you, Kia. And next question is for Malik, and it's really about advocacy. Now, Penn, if I could say, I feel like it's a really great place for activism itself, and we're certainly in a time period where that is really important. And so thinking about how this community resource centers really helped to support students in this advocacy. And I know in the LGBT Center, it's not only the space, but the activities for the staff to like advocate on behalf of LGBT community and sensitivity and inclusion for the whole university, our policy and practice. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how you support students, engage Penn students in this way.
Sure, of course. So as I mentioned, the LGBT Center works through 3 pillars: advocacy, education, and support. And if we focus on this advocacy piece for a moment, it really is about ensuring that the university as a whole are implementing policies and procedures that are supportive of folks that identify within the LGBTQ+ community, right? So we do that advocacy as a community effort, right? Really pushing for, we've done things that support trans inclusive healthcare for our students. We've done things to support gender inclusive housing, gender inclusive restrooms around campus. We think about in terms of how folks, our policy or our non-discrimination policy, making sure that that includes gender, sexuality, gender expression, right? Understanding that those nuances have to be included in the various pieces of our policies. In addition, we have several student groups that kind of work from an advocacy space that we support. So we think of our Lambda Alliance. The Lambda Alliance is the overarching LGBTQ+ student group that works with administration, us, and the student population to garner what are the needs of our LGBTQ+ students, how can we address some of these things. So we work heavily with that student organization to promote and push some of those things. In addition, as Sanjana started to mention earlier, we are one of 9 confidential resources on campus. So we advocate for students in that regard. If they are navigating any type of sexual misconduct, harassment, they feel like they may have been aggrieved because of some piece of their identity, they can come to us and we can support them through that process and get them to the right connects to make sure that they are getting their needs met and addressing the issues that may have come up. And knowing that if they come to us, it's not going out or anywhere unless they ask us to do so on their behalf. So we do some of that individual advocacy, but then also the overarching community advocacy. And I would say the other cultural resource centers are similar in that vein, right? Not all of them are confidential, but they are spaces that will work with individual students or maybe even faculty and staff that feel like they may have been experiencing something not so great, right? I think it's really important for us to note that as great as the University of Pennsylvania is, it is not immune to some of the overarching social injustices and diseases that we may see in our country. And we have to be knowledgeable of that and think about how we can address those things even within our own community of Penn. And we as the Cultural Resource Centers are always pushing to make sure that we're moving in the right vein in that regard.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing with us, Malik. I just want to add a quick note that you don't have an application to like be a part of any of these resource centers. Like you can walk in, you can go into every center every day if you wanted to do that. You can pop in and out of the virtual spaces as a student. That this is opportunity and part of your Penn experience should you be a Penn student, and just to go into that knowing that these resources are for you to explore and to be a part of your experience.
Yes, so, I would echo that. I saw a question that said, are we like student groups? So we're kind of that step beyond just student groups, right? You don't have to necessarily be a member of our centers. You just have to be. You have to be a member of our Penn community and come in and check out whatever you need to, right? And I think, again, it's important that we note that all of our spaces embrace the multiple facets of your identity that you may bring, right? You don't have to only go to one space because you feel like that's you. It's embracing this sense that we all are a family together in terms of how we navigate our identity. And we might get different needs and resources met from different spaces, and you're welcome in all of them.
Absolutely. Family and home, those are the two things I think about when I think about all of you and the spaces and the people that you represent. And now I'm going to ask Peter. Patch has over 80 student groups. When I was putting together your slide, I started to try to like summarize some of them, and I just found it impossible. There were just so many that covered pre-professional, like cultural, service, Greek, performing arts, faith-based organizations, even so. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about how these clubs and organizations are created, and what role does your leadership and Patch have in overseeing and supporting these groups?
Absolutely. And I just want to mention that, sorry, I had to move around. My window behind me is facing south, so it looks like I'm in the shadows. So like, I just wanted to move my desk around so that you can see my face. Overall, I would say that, you know, more recently, it's over 100 now of Asian American groups. Our communities are very dynamic, as well as all the communities within all the affinity groups that are represented in this space. I would say that some of these organizations predate, you know, my center. As I mentioned before, we were established in fall of 2000. And so some of these organizations have been around for hundreds of years, and some of these organizations have been, you know, just started since 2 years ago or even last year. Overall, I would have to say that Penn is such a dynamic space. And I would say that it's quite grassroots in its spirit, because a lot of these groups are established, and these ideas come from our students, and they work together to develop these organizations. And what's great about having, you know, these cultural resource centers that makes ourselves available is that we work in partnership and side by side with our student leaders to brainstorm ideas, but also connect them to various resources, you know, around campus, but also serve as a resource ourselves, just to make sure that, you know, people are thinking, you know, outside the box, and also considering other ideas. But often I would have to say that, you know, the students really are the drivers in the seat, and they have the best ideas. I'm constantly impressed with all the creative, you know, solutions and ideas that come from our students, and it's quite amazing. I would have to say that, you know, some of our groups within all communities that are represented here are world-renowned. They go on tours around the country, you know, around the world, and some are very good at, you know, winning awards in dance competitions and so on and so forth, or what have you. And so And some of these, groups, get recognized and are also included in some type of academic study as well. So it's just quite amazing to be, affiliated with all the folks that are here at Penn. And I think that overall, I'll give you a certain flavor in regards to the new initiatives that have come out in Patch. Within the last couple of years, we've helped, and this is the example of how grassroots, the process is. So within Patch, we had, a handful of students who wanted to create an Asian American femme, identified space. And that came to be a group called Spice Collective. And so that is an organization that we supported within the last 4 years. Also during that same time, in 2016, we helped support the South Asian Women's Space, as well as 7-8, the Asian American first and low income space. And then more recently, and within the last year, we've helped support organizations like the Penn API Politics organization. It's a space where they really want to do grassroots collective work and working side by side with the local community, and also address certain issues around locally, nationally, and around the world. I'm so proud of what they've been doing within the last couple of years. And also something like the Lotus Collective, which is a space where people talk about, Asian American, thought leaders, and how that connects with, folks with other, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. So specifically, for example, how Grace Lee Boggs, as an Asian American activist, her work is inspired by very thought leaders like Malcolm X, as well as James Baldwin. So it's great to be in this space and also be in a position that I certainly love, and in support of our students. And quite frankly, I would have to say that, our approach with dealing with our students is quite familial. And so if they need to work with us, we take the time to support them and be as thoughtful as possible. And if they need to connect with other resources, what we do specifically within our space is that we don't just sort of direct them over there, but we check in with them and say, hey, how did that go? How did that meeting go? And what have you. That adds, it's these little things that make it, so much important for us to connect with our community of students. And I think that that's something that is quite important. This year, because we're doing everything virtually, we're really talking about self-care and mental wellness. And so we're encouraging our student organization leaders and individuals to really be mindful of that. And also, ask the hard questions to themselves. Is it okay to not, to step down from a leadership position, or not, continue, the work, in regards to some of these initiatives. And I think that that's, part of our community building work, is to have these, thoughtful questions, not only for ourselves, but for our community, and we grow from that. And so that would be, pretty much what we do, and in regards to our students.
Thank you so much, Peter. And when you go to the missions website and you hear that we have over 500 clubs and organizations, know that a majority of those clubs and organizations intersect with one or more of the cultural resource centers. It's just that many connections, that many opportunities, and also that responsive to what's happening today. And so those changes, those adaptations are made so that students can have the experiences and the support that they need. And this is a good transition for Sanjana, who I'd like to talk about advising, because you might not think about the centers in that sort of advising space. And I myself have a lot of mentors within these community spaces, and I'm surprised too when they say, oh, I have a counseling degree. I didn't think about that, because I was just thinking them as a friend, as a mentor, someone who's helped me along and helped the students along. And so would you talk a little bit about the type of advising that you provide for students, and how do students come to find you as a resource, and you meaning like all of you as sort of resource centers?
Yeah, that's a really wonderful question. And I think in some ways, as I've been trying to listen to my colleagues, I've also been trying to keep up with your questions, all of you who are listening and watching along. And you're actually asking really, really thoughtful questions exactly about this. And I think when I think about advice, when I think about what all of us are engaged with across all of our centers, whether or not we all have degrees, give me 1 second. Can you hear me now? I think hopefully my audio is back. Perfect. So I think all that I was going to try to offer is that even though we may not all have counseling degrees, I think one of the things that we're all really invested in is building trusting relationships with each and every one of you. I think that feels really important in order for you to know that as much as we are here to celebrate your successes, and we're here when you really ace that test, when you get into a group that you're really interested in, when you're able to find friends that you connect with and feel close to, we also want to be really aware too that there can be struggles and there can be moments of doubt, of asking questions, of sitting in a classroom where you might hear a professor refuse to really engage with the conversations that you want to engage with about your identity, about your culture, about how it is that you make your way as a full person. And when any of those questions are coming your way, I think it can be really useful to know that the cultural resource centers are here to make that space, to sit in that not knowing, to sit with those questions, that uncertainty, and to also really encourage you to believe that those questions mean that you're growing and that you're helping the university grow too. So at no point is anyone going to turn you away and say that that's too complicated a question or we don't know where to start. We always know where to start, and it starts by listening to you. And it starts by really reaching out and making sure that all of you know that the questions that you've been asking about what it looks like to respond to your safety needs, your wellness needs, whatever it is that makes you feel like a whole person, all of that is really important and really valuable. And if there are questions that we haven't been able to fully engage with, I really do want to invite you to share those questions with us, email us, get on the websites. You can always feel free to at least let us know what's on your mind as you're thinking about even whether Penn could be a space for you. You get to ask those questions. And I think it's really, really meaningful to us to be able to receive that invitation of you reaching out and saying, I want to have a conversation. That's how all of this starts. And no matter the range, no matter whether you think it might not be significant enough, or you don't know if it's serious enough, or you think maybe it's too much, I really want to give you that assurance that if it's something that you're thinking about that is moving you in some way, whether it's in a joyful way or in kind of a harder or more difficult way, if it's on your mind or you're carrying it somewhere with you, we want to hear about it. We want to make that space with you. Nothing is too much for us. At no point are you ever going to get that feedback from us. We really want to be here supporting you in your wholeness while you're here. And so that might look like you coming in after a meeting. That might mean you saying like, hey, I want to have a cup of tea and I also want to learn more about what you do. Or you might just want to ask a friend to check in with us on your behalf. Whatever it may be, whatever your entry point is, there's no wrong way to get connected and to start a conversation with any one of us. And I think all of us are really committed to that in each of our different spaces. So we're very aligned in trying to make sure that if I don't know how to support you, I will make sure that I'm able to connect you with someone who I trust who will be able to support you. So there's no limitations in what we're hopefully trying to connect you with. So that's all that I'll try to offer and hopefully open up to other questions or thoughts if folks have them.
Thank you so much. And I know that you've been eagerly waiting to ask more questions, and I hope that you found the questions that were asked. I know that the panelists have been trying to respond in their own responses now, like looking at what you've been asking about. But one question that's come up is, what are the leadership opportunities look like in the community, the centers, especially during your first year? Would anybody like to take that question?
I can start at least. I would say, especially as incoming students, it's really important to know that if and when you want and or need something, you can make it happen. I think Peter started to mention this, is that so much of what we do is student driven, right? It comes from you all, as you know what your wants and needs are for you as students. So being able to come in and say, hey, look, I have this idea. I've been thinking about doing this. How can you support me in making this happen? Boom, we'll figure it out, right? We'll get you connected either with our spaces, with other spaces on campus that can push you forward in making that happen. I think there's a beautiful way of recognizing, one, you can get involved with student groups and become leaders of student organizations in that way, but you don't have to have a leadership position to be a leader, right? Being a leader is about, you see something, you do something, you step up, you see a want, you see a need that is not being addressed, and you make it happen. I think there, as Peter was saying also, some of our offices, we only have 2 or 3 folks that are working. Right now, Corelli is the only person in La Casa, right? So we need help. We need help, and that help comes from you all as students, right? If you have things that you want to push forward, let us know, and we can help and push those things out. Being a leader is not just about having a position, it's about just doing something. And when you see and want something done, make it happen, and we'll be there to support you along.
Wonderful advice, especially not getting caught up on those titles, because while they might mean a lot right now, like we realized in this pandemic that they're not meaning quite the same thing. And so like just being able to respond to the need and knowing that that's something that's fulfilling to you. I mean, thinking about that's what college can give you. We're coming close to the end of our time, so I do want to say, please make sure that if you're interested, please explore the website. I think a lot of that information has already been shared in the chat so that you can explore and ask further questions and see other upcoming events. I do have another question. I'd like to direct this at Kia. And this is, again, something that everybody offers, but thinking about the resources that someone might not realize that they need when they get to Penn, thinking about how they might turn to the cultural resource centers to fill in things that, might be food or clothing or travel, or what resources can this cultural resources, the centers provide in that?
Yeah. Historically, before the pandemic, we have a food pantry where students, they can come to us if they want food and to take home to cook. So we had that. I think now we're partnering with local Philadelphia communities to think about still doing the goodie bags, but maybe doing a non-contact way of, where we could drop it off somewhere and students can come and pick it up. So we have spaces like that. We offer things like that to help students to alleviate if they don't have enough food or if they run out of food. And then we also offer the Figley Library. And the Figley Library is a library that's donated, books are donated from alumni, from community, for students who may not be able to afford the textbooks that they need for their STEM classes or for their science classes. So students can come to the GIC to our lending library. And now we are at a process in integrating the GIC Figley Library, integrating that with the Penn Library so that it is one solid system, so that if students are checking out books from us, they are checking it out from the university instead of us having a separate Excel spreadsheet for these students. So you can come to us with those types of questions. We have helped students apply and think about applying for SNAP to have a food stamp card for students who may need that type of support. And so there's opportunities like that to support students who may need those resources.
Thank you so much, Kia. And I want to thank all of you for participating. The panel, it's just wonderful to see you all and to hear how you're doing and to, get that energy and love and feeling of home and campus. When I think of Penn, I definitely think of all of you. And I hope that the students get that sense and encouraged to seek out more information. So I want to ask you to just have a wonderful evening, and thank you to the participants. Please join us at the websites to be able to connect further. Wishing you all a wonderful evening and take care, everybody. Wanishi.
Thanks, everyone.